Hey everyone, it's Kelvin from Project Tech Gaming, and this week's game of the week is going to be
Hey, I can't see what's happening.
What is that? What's happening out there? Does anybody know?
Hey!
Do you hear them coming?
Who are they?
Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. Now, I chose this game because there's an elephant in the room every time I hear this game. For those that know me, I'm a huge Metal Gear Solid fan. I love Metal Gear Solid, and that's what kind of drove me to enjoy games the way I do and to to start off playing PlayStation at first, because I started playing the Metal Gear Solid demo that came out when the PlayStation first came out. So that's what drove me to kind of love talking about games and just playing Metal Gear Solid games in general. And you can even see in the shrine back there that I have, like, I really do love Metal Gear Solid games. This one in particular, though, Metal Gear Solid 5, Phantom Pain, it didn't do it for me. And it didn't do it for a lot of Metal Gear Solid fans for a very good reason. I think the game fell short in a lot of ways, and I wanted to address that elephant in the room because I feel like people do talk about it, but not enough people really mention how much this game hindered the series. I just think that it fell really short, and especially for it being the last Metal Gear Solid game of the series, it's very disappointing. Like I every time someone mentions Metal Gear Solid to me, I just have this thing in the back of my mind. I'm just like, it just feels depressing. It just feels very sad. I'm just like, oh God, like this game could have been so much more, so much better than what it was. And I just want to talk about that because I played the Metal Gear Solid series numerous times, but when it came to Metal Gear Solid 5, I had a difficult time getting back to it once I beat it. In fact, I never went back. Like, I never went back to play the game at all once I beat it. And I think that speaks volume because that game is one of my favorite games, right? But also it did things very well, but also did things very poorly that caused the game to, not be the best in the series. So I want to talk about that this week. So first off, I guess I'll start off with all the negative things that I don't appreciate of Metal Gear Solid 5. And I think everyone can agree with this. The story in this game was pretty bad. The story had little to no effort in pushing the story forward, one, and two, it made absolutely no sense. Now, don't get me wrong though, the game itself is very convoluted. The series in itself is very convoluted, but it makes sense if you really sit down and understand the lore behind Metal Gear Solid. It makes sense. This one in particular, Metal Gear Solid 5, it was all over the place. It had no structure. It didn't make sense in a Metal Gear Solid aspect, if that makes any sense. It didn't hit well with a lot of fans, including myself. And I think the main reason was a lot of the things that were happening behind the scenes with Kojima and Konami, it hindered the experience. It hindered the game in itself. We were told after, post-game launch that the game was basically missing a whole chapter, and they didn't include that in the game. They did show us what we were missing, which was a little kind of messed up in a way, but it just goes to show you this game was not finished. The story was not finished, and you're playing this game throughout the game. You're kind of going through different missions and villages and all this stuff to kind of progress with the game, but there's no structure as to how to do it. You're just kind of going in there, and then some missions you can progress through the story, and some missions you're just kind of doing side missions. So there was never like a one structure to just kind of progress the game, and I think that lack of structure kind of hindered the experience for me. Another issue that I've had with the game throughout me playing the game was the fact that there were constant loading screens, and I think that was one of my main issues not going back to playing the game for a second time, was because the loading was atrocious in that game. I mean, and I think what I mean by loading, I should say, is the fact that from going from like one mission to another, you had to literally watch Snake go into a helicopter and then get to that certain mission. That took all of maybe a minute. It doesn't seem long in the grand scheme of things, but if you're trying to play a game, it's a long time. If you're just waiting for a whole minute to just play this game, each mission you're trying to get through, it's a little bothersome. And so that kind of got old real quick, right? Like once you started getting throughout the game, like it was cool the first half of the game, but then once after that, you're like, all right, I get it. Like I just want to play the game. There was no way to progress or skip that part. So that really hindered my experience with it. Getting even to the missions, once you get to the missions, they were all relatively the same. Go from this point to this point, pick up this person, bring this person back, or go to this point, kill all these people. Like there was structure in that aspect, but they were all generally the same. Once you did 4 or 5 of them, you were basically doing all of them again and again and again. And it just felt really samey. It felt like there was, again, unfinished. It felt unfinished. It felt like this was just tacked on, and it didn't really make me feel like I wanted to continue playing this. I just wanted to get to the story. But the story was convoluted, and it was no structure to begin with, so it just even made it worse for me to play the game. Another part that I didn't like was once you got to the open world part, which was, it was great that, you know, Metal Gear Solid was finally changing its structure and becoming an open world game. I thought that was great. But once you got to the open world part of the game, there was not much to do. Like it was a whole open wasteland, and there was really nothing there. There's a few factions here and there, a few places that you can go, but there was nothing really of substance in the game. You know, a lot of it was just desert, and sometimes you had like little tents here and there and places that you can go, but nothing of substance. So that was disappointing. I think what would have helped this game out more would have been the fact that if Kojima added more of these buildings throughout the games, there were only certain amount of times where you were actually inside a building in this game, and it just kind of lost that Metal Gear Solid feel from previous ones. So I thought that was a huge issue, a huge part of me not enjoying this game as much, just simply because there weren't parts where I felt like I was playing Metal Gear Solid game. But there were parts that were, like, don't get me wrong, there were some fantastic parts, and I'll get to that in a little bit later here. But a lot of the game also, when it came to the story, the characters were very memorable. I just didn't really I mean, obviously you know your old cast, right? Like you have your old cast there, but you know Quiet is definitely one of the more memorable characters, the newer characters in the game. Besides that, I just didn't really care for a lot of the characters in the game. There was just issues that again, the story was probably the main thing. The story really was god-awful in that sense, and I think that if the story made more sense, if the story was a little bit more compelling in that aspect, I think this would have been a different tone, and I think I would have been talking about this completely differently. Unfortunately, the game just fell flat and fell short, and it sucks. You know, going on with the story, what kind of ties everything together is, of course, Snake himself, right? Snake in this game is more of a silent protagonist in this one, right? And he doesn't really have much to say. Of course, they removed the previous voice actor for Snake, which was David Hayter, and they replaced him with Keith Sutherland, high-paid actor. He's been in multiple shows. He didn't really say much, and mostly had to do with the fact that he was a high-paid actor, so they probably didn't give him a lot of lines. It would be more cost-effective for Konami. And because of that, as a result, that caused the game or the character itself to be a little bit it's weird, because Snake was always the person to talk and always kind of question things and always ask a question within a question in that sense.
Invited. What soldiers? A nuclear weapon. Questions. Approach. Launch. PAL. Remains. Cell specimens. Strengthened. Gene therapy. The sons of Big Boss. The DIA. A female analyst? Who's they? Liquid Snake. Liquid Snake. I have a twin? You mean you've seen them naked? Nanomachines. Say what? It'll make me smarter, huh? Liquid Snake. Metal Gear. Revolution. Rex. There are 2 passwords.
And this time he was more quiet, laid back, just kind of like having every other character talk and kind of explain things. So it just felt weird, especially not having David Hayter, who was the voice of Snake. And it just felt it was hard to wrap your head around it. I got used to it, towards the end of the game, and I enjoyed when he did speak. He did do a good job when Snake was actually talking and kind of in the conversations. But a lot of the time he's not present. He's not really talking, which is, kind of weird. So that really hindered, again, another part of the game. And all these little pieces that start coming together, you start realizing, damn, like this game wasn't as great as I thought it was. When I beat the game, I'm like, oh, this was great. Like I enjoyed it. But when you look back at it, it's like, no, this was not good. This was not on par with what Kojima has done in the past. What other Metal Gear Solid games have been able to achieve. Like you think about this game, and then you think about Metal Gear Solid 4, Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. Like those games propelled the series to a different level each time they did, and like this series is the main reason why the gaming industry is where it is today. This is where most games started to understand, okay, our games don't have to be Mario-esque, right? Like it can be a very grounded and deep story that can engage the audience in so many more ways than just, playing levels through levels. Like this game helped make the genre of gaming into more of the same level of like movies, right? And I think that is one of the main reasons why I love the series in itself. So that's one of the downfalls of this game. But again, the game did fantastic at other things that I truly loved, and I think it did propel the series to a different level. But unfortunately, we weren't able to get a new game because of the whole fallout between Konami and Kojima. One of the things that it did great were, the graphics. The graphics were phenomenal, like beautiful graphics. And keep in mind, though, this game came out on the PS3. It came out on the PS3 and PS4. So you're pushing these amazing graphics on a PS3 system on a hardware that's relatively old, and it looks phenomenal. The Fox engine did a great job at visualizing everyone's features, every character's emotions, and the complete wasteland that the game has. It looked gorgeous, even though it's just kind of desert throughout the whole game. But it looked amazing. Like every detail was there, shadows, lighting, like everything was there, and it made that game feel like rich in character, if that makes sense. Now, the open world part, it was actually the best part of the game. Now hear me out. So the game obviously fell short for me because it was more so of like a wasteland place, right? But when you got into the game and you got actually into those like factions and those places where you can actually, when you're trying to like sneak your way into enemy bases, that was the highlight of the game. When you had to, you're up in this mountain and you're overseeing this like tent full of like enemies, and you're trying to understand what you're gonna do to progress through the game. I think that's when the game shined, because that's when it felt the most Metal Gear Solid to me, and I think everyone else will agree. Where you can use any type of arsenal, any type of weapon at your disposal, and you still feel like you're not overpowered, but you just feel like you have all these gadgets that you can just use and play around with. And the whole espionage part of it was great. You can sneak through like enemy bases, or you can just like go guns blazing. Like the game never hindered you or never forced you to do anything that you didn't want to, which was probably the best part. But that was what made this game for me, was the gameplay. The gameplay really shined in this game because, again, doing whatever you want, however you please, grabbing enemies, sending them over to your base, or putting them unconscious, throwing them in a bin, hiding the next body, or, like you have so many gadgets at your disposal that it just felt, again, it felt like I was playing Metal Gear Solid 4 all over again. So that was like probably the best part. And then you could customize your weapons, which was pretty cool. And then riding around with D-Horse was pretty cool. It felt, honestly, some will say it probably felt a little bit better than Red Dead Redemption, because the game felt tight. It felt great. And the gameplay added a lot to Snake's character design that I feel like would have been so much, like if we would have seen a Metal Gear Solid 6 and Kojima would have been able to add all these cool features that he did, it would have been a phenomenal game. Like throwing yourself on the ground, everything felt seamless. Like you throw yourself on the ground, then you start crawling, and then you're just kind of like throwing yourself on the ground, and then you crawl, and then you start seamlessly going from crawling to crouching. Like it just felt so good. The gameplay was probably the best part of this game, honestly. And I can't stress that enough. Like if it wasn't for the awful load times, I would probably still play that game just to fuck around and just to play and, you know, probably do a mission here and there. But yeah, that was probably the best part of the game. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think we'll ever see a Metal Gear Solid 6? And if we do you think that would redeem the series in itself? For me personally, I don't know. I don't think, one, Kojima will ever make another Metal Gear Solid game, unfortunately. And I think if he ever did, he'd be hard pressed to compete with what he's done in the past. I think he can do it, but I think having the gameplay for Metal Gear Solid 5 was probably the best part, but I don't know where the story can go from there. Like, that's the only issue. Otherwise, I mean, by all means, I really can't wait to see what, you know, Metal Gear Solid has in store for us at some point. I do think that although a 6 won't ever happen, I do think that they're going to make a remake, and I think that's, you know, it's been rumored here and there, so I'm really hoping that that's true. And who knows, you know, that might spark Kojima to come back and actually make a 6. You never know. Or even a spinoff. Like, I'll be okay with a spinoff. Get rid of all the characters as much as I love them all. Get rid of the lore behind Metal Gear Solid and just start fresh, you know, and just kind of make its own like spin-off game. Like, I'd be down for that. As long as Kojima's on it, I'm cool. Anyways, guys, this was my TED Talk for Metal Gear Solid. Let me know what you guys think. Again, thank you guys so much for you know, watching this video. Give us a like, share, subscribe. Appreciate it. You have no idea how much that helps us. And until next time, catch you guys later.